let's get sort of down to, down to business here. Let me start out. I think it's really important to start out by sort of laying out how I sort of see the issue of Islam. And so I think it's really important to number one, define what I mean and what my perspective is on Islam. And I'm going to quote someone who I think captures it at least my point of view very well. Let me just start out. I'm going to quote Bernard Lewis, who wrote a book called The Crisis of Islam. Bernard Lewis is a very famous historian, professor emeritus at Princeton University. He's written many, many books on the Middle East. And he writes, quote, "Islam has brought comfort and peace of mind to countless millions of men and women. It has given dignity and meaning to drab and impoverished lives. It has taught people of different races to live in brotherhood and people of different creeds to live side by side in reasonable tolerance. It inspired a great civilization in which others beside Muslims live creative and useful lives, and which by its achievement enriched the whole world. But Islam, like other religions, has also known periods when it inspired in some of its followers a mood of hatred and violence. It is our misfortune that part, though by no means all, or even most of the Muslim world is now going through such a period, and that much, though again not all, of that hatred is directed against us." Let's start the discussion, since I'm here at a college campus, and although OU is certainly not Harvard, thanks be to God, a discussion first I have to talk about the left, because I will tell you I am absolutely perplexed that the radical left in this country, or even the mainstream left in this country, does not join in opposing the ideology that we confront, radical Islamists. If you look at the American left, look at the pillars of the American left. What has the American left over the past 25 years or more fought to do to change the laws of America? Fought as the pillars of their philosophy. Number one, feminism. Number two, homosexual rights. Number three, civil rights. Number four, the appreciation of faith, of reason instead of faith. In fact, the ascendancy of reason over faith. The privatization of religion, secular governance. Those are the pillars and exactly what the secular left has been trying to do in this country for 30 years. Now, I cannot name a group of people in the world that are more opposed to that philosophy than the radical Islamists, on every single score. And I'm going to walk through some examples and talk, in some cases, not all, of leftists who have come to that realization and have tried to engage their own colleagues in this discussion. One is someone you may know who is a former Dutch parliamentarian. Her name is Ayaan Hirsi Ali. She is a self-described feminist, leftist, atheist, someone born in Somalia, born a Muslim, who went through some horrible things in her life, was going to be forced to marry someone against her will, and she left and escaped to the Netherlands. She rose, as I mentioned, to a member of parliament. Before she did that, she worked with a gentleman by the name of Theo van Gogh. Name may be familiar to you. He's the grandson of Vincent van Gogh, who was murdered after producing a documentary called Submission, talking about the abuse of women in these radical Islamic countries. So the Dutch government decided it was best that she not be in the country anymore. She was stirring up too many problems. And so they asked her to leave. She wanted to come to America. And she wanted to find employment. She's not married. And she sought employment at where most feminist, leftist, atheists go to find employment, universities. And she went to the university community all over America. And no one would hire her. No one would hire her. Where did she end up working? She works at the same place that employs Lynn Cheney and Newt Gingrich. the American Enterprise Institute. The left has rejected her, condemned her as someone not to listen to. There's a guy by the name of Bruce Bauer. Bruce Bauer wrote a book called Stealing Jesus, which was a harsh commentary on the Christian right and how it was ruining America. In fact, he was so disgusted with the Christian right and so afraid of the Christian right that he left America with his same-sex partner to the Netherlands, where they lived for several years until he realized that the radical Islamists in the Netherlands were much more frightening than the radical Christians in this country, and he left to Norway. And he wrote a book while he was in Norway called While Europe Slept: How Radical Islam is Destroying Europe from Within. He is rejected by the American left. He was appalled by the treatment of homosexuals within the Islamist world. If you don't think that homosexuals are treated poorly in radical Islamic society, take the words of Mahmoud Ahmadinejad, who said at Columbia University, "We don't have the problem of homosexuality in Iran." Well, maybe that's because, according to numerous reports, over 4,000 homosexuals have been killed in Iran. Ed Hussein, a self-described British Islamist, he went to Saudi Arabia because he wanted to be with his fellow Islamists. Quote, he said, "Racism was an integral part of Saudi society. My students often use the word nigger to describe black people. I was living in the world's most avowedly Muslim country, yet I found it anything but. I was appalled by the imposition of Wahhabism in the public realm, something I explicitly sought as an Islamist. I've had many conversations with a man by the name of Tawfiq Hamid. He has death threats out on him. He's an Egyptian who was raised in a family of scientists in Egypt, but as a boy about to enter college, he was captivated by the radical Islamic talk and its opposition to the government, and so he joined. In fact, he trained, he says, with Zawahiri. What he said to me really sort of stunned me, because he said before he came into the mosque for the first time, for his first meeting, his recruiter said to him, knowing his background, he said, "To think is an infidel. To think is an infidel. There is no room for reason here. Leave your science and scientific background and rational and reasoning behind you. You are here simply to obey what you are told, simply to obey what we decide is Allah's will for you." Reason in the radical Islamic world. And finally, we all know that Islam does not differentiate between church and state. They are one and the same in radical Islamic cultures. So here we have it. The American left, the apologists all across this land for the people that we fight. And yet, these people oppose human rights, women's rights, according to the left, human rights, women's rights, racial equality, sexual freedom, religious freedom, a secular state, reason. Why? What is it?